Hello there, my name is Ali Riza. I work for Mabuk Game, the board game store, and today I'm going to show you the hit game Pandemic and explain to you how to play it. So Pandemic is a game where you play cooperatively with 1 up to 4 of your friends. It is about stopping a virus from spreading all across the world. This is what you will have in your hand and what you will play in order to win the game. This will mark which cities will be infected during the course of the game. This will determine what special powers you have as a player. This will tell you what actions you can take during a game. Pick your role from the role cards. In this case, I've already chosen the medic and the researcher for the role. Pick the correct colored pawns from the selection and put them in Atlanta. When you start the game, you will have 6 epidemic cards. You can choose from 6 down to 4 epidemic cards. Divide the player deck into 4 and put 1 epidemic card in each of the 4 decks. Finally, shuffle these decks and put them on top of each other, therefore ensuring that you will meet 4 different pandemic cards in 4 almost roughly equally the same amount of time. Then put the player deck on the player deck outline. Put the infection deck on the infection deck outline. Now you can start the game. When the game starts, pick up 3 cards from the infection deck. These 3 cards will determine which cities are infected at the start of the game. Take the same color cube of each card, 3 of them, and put them on top of the city. In this case, Bangkok, Jakarta, and Atlanta has been infected. Then discard the 3 cards. Do the same thing 2 more times with 1 less cube. So in this case, Paris, Beijing, and Tehran has been infected by 2 cubes each. 1 more time. In this case, Sydney, Riyadh, and Bogota has been infected by 1 cube each. Discard all the cards, put them in the discard pile. And now you are ready to start the game. The game consists of 2 phases. One is the play phase, where you move around your characters and perform actions with them, such as getting rid of infection cubes from cities. Every turn, you can do 4 actions, and they can be combined any way you want. You can move, and then you can get rid of infections. You can just move entirely without doing anything else. Or you can just get rid of infections. The actions consist of drive or ferry. You can move to another city that is connected by a line, and that will cost you 1 action. Direct flight. You start the game, you will begin with 3 cards. If you discard a card in the player discard pile, you'll be able to move to that city immediately. That will cost you 1 action. Charter flight. When you get a charter flight, you can discard the city card that's the same city as you're in this case Atlanta, and move to any other city you would like to go to. For example, Jakarta. Shuttle flight. When you take a shuttle flight, you can move from one research station to another research station immediately. This will cost you one move. Build a research station. If you have the city card of the city you are in, you can discard that card and put down a brand new research station. Treat disease. When you treat a disease, you can remove one cube from the city. For every treat disease action you take, you can get rid of one cube. Share knowledge. When you have a city card in the same city that you are in, you can give the card from one player to another player, and they will be able to use it for themselves. Take note that it has to be the same city that you are in. If you have, for example, the Atlanta card, but the two of you are in Miami, then you cannot give that card to the other player. Discover Cure. When you have 5 cards of the same color, you can go to a research station, discard all 5 cards of the same color, and discover a cure for that disease. When you get rid of a cube that is of a disease that's been cured, instead of getting rid of one, you will get rid of all of them immediately. This will cost you only one action. Should you go around and get rid of all the disease cubes, then you can flip over the cure marker and it will mark it as being eradicated. From then on, if a red card shows up in the infection, because all infections of that color is gone now. When you have completed all 4 of your actions, you draw 2 cards from the player card deck. You can have a maximum of 7 cards. If you have more than 7 cards, discard down so that you only have 7 cards in your hand. When your player phase is over, next is the infection phase. When the infection phase starts, take a look at the infection rate. That will show you how many cards you have to draw to start infecting the cities. In this case, I have to draw 2 cards. When you infect cities, you take a look at which card is infected, which city is infected, and then put down a single infection cube on each of the cities. As the game goes on, the infection rate will increase to 3 and then finally to 4. Every so often, after you finish a turn, when you draw cards from the player deck, you will draw an epidemic card. These epidemic cards mean that the game will get slightly harder. When you get an epidemic card, you will need to do 3 things. First is to increase the infection rate by 1 space. Next is to infect a city completely. Draw the bottom card from the infection deck, in this case, Sao Paulo, and put down 3 cubes on the city on the card, instead of just 1 cube. Finally, you will need to intensify. Shuffle the cards that are in the infection discard pile, and only the infection discard pile, and put them on top of the infection deck. Finally, one last thing to explain are outbreaks. Outbreaks are when you draw an infection card that will make you put down a 4th cube on a city, for example in this case Atlanta. Instead of putting down a 4th cube, an outbreak happens. When an outbreak happens, first you move down the outbreak marker by 1 space. Next, instead of putting down a 4th cube in the city that has an outbreak, you put down a cube on every other city that it is connected to by a line. In this case, Chicago, Washington, and Miami. Even though Miami is supposed to only have yellow colors, in this case, it has a blue infection cube. If a city gets an outbreak, such as in this case Bangkok, and you are forced to put down a cube and it is next to another city that has 3 cubes, that city too gets an outbreak. Instead of putting down a 4th cube, again, put down the outbreak rate by 1. That city also puts down infection cubes all around it from which a chain outbreak occurred, in this case Bangkok. You have to be careful and make sure there are as few cities that can get an outbreak as much as you can in order to prevent outbreaks from happening. You will win the game when you have discovered 4 cures. When you have discovered cures for all the diseases. You do not need to eradicate it, although if you do eradicate it, it will mean you have a smaller chance to lose. You will lose if the outbreak meter reaches 8. the player deck runs out of cards, or you run out of cubes which to infect cities. One thing to remember is that every pawn and every role has its own abilities. In this case, the medic removes all cubes from the same color when treating diseases using only one action, instead of needing one action for every cube. And when the team has discovered the cure, the medic only needs to move to a city to remove cubes automatically. Meanwhile, the researcher can trade cards even though it's not the same city as she is in. The goal of the game is to go around the world, getting rid of infections before they spread, and discovering cures to get rid of them completely. Pandemic is a very interesting game in which, instead of being competitive like most other board games, it is a cooperative game where you are essentially up against the computer, or to be more precise, against the game itself. The game will automatically spread infections as the game goes on, and your job is to stop it in the middle of its tracks. It's a fun and simple game that you can master within 5 minutes. Well, that's it for me today. If you'd like to see more unboxing videos of board games, you need only to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel, and I will see you again next time.